This is Keep On Leading, and we're continuing on with chapter 3, which is initiative. So the story starts in 2007 in Iraq, and I had been promoted to a assistant planning officer, and it was one of those positions where you have a lot of responsibility, you don't really have a lot of authority, and it's something that you generally fill before you go into a command position. And I just decided, like, I am going to be the best planner possible. And that competitive spirit pushed me harder and faster, and wanted to, rather than rely on a natural talent, which I haven't been gifted. I was going to be certain that hard work was going to get me through. And so as soon as tasks were given to me, I'd delve into the task, make absolutely certain it was done in record time and with impeccable quality. And I'd quickly inform my boss that that work was complete and I was ready for my next task. And like that, the cycle continued. So it was, I'm done. What's next? And then I'd get a task and finish. And I'm done. What's next? And I get a task and then finish. And I'm done. What's next? And that was kind of my the way I operated. And finally, one day, my boss, his name was Major Schreiner, he looked at me like over his computer. I could see his eyes over the computer as he looked at me. And he locked eyes with mine, and his hands never left his keyboard. I mean, he was sitting there typing, and he just looked at me and he goes, Lewis, you have access to the calendar. Look at it and figure out what's next. And slowly his eyes went back down to the computer. And I remember the clacking of the keyboard as I slowly spun in my chair to stare back at my own screen. And I'm sure if I had asked him, he may not even remember the interaction, but for me, it was a life altering conversation because he was absolutely right. Here I was in my own head telling myself what an amazing job I was doing. And meanwhile, I wasn't much more than a second pair of hands. I wasn't contributing to the mission at all. And they weren't getting my best brain power. In fact, they were getting very little of it. They were just getting this monkey doing task. And I had essentially taken zero initiative for weeks. None. Now, how can I be a successful leader if I was incapable of making even the smallest decision of what's next? And I realized that if I was actually going to lead, if I was actually going to make a difference, I had to lead myself. And at that moment, I began a journey of change. It was as if I had been a dog on a leash my whole life. And now this major just took the leash off. And it was time for me to run on my own. And I understood the mission well. In fact, I had written the order and I was intimately familiar with all the details and the commander's intent. And I knew what I had the authority to do. I knew what needed to be done. I knew what the end state was. And so off I went. And that was the last time I ever asked Major Schreiner, what's next? From then on, I operated freely, wholly on initiative, executing tasks towards the mission and the goal of the unit. And it was scary at first. And sometimes I missed the mark, which anyone will do when you're doing this. But I did my best work when I was free. And in the years since, the principle of, you have access to the calendar has often been in the back of my mind. I arrive at a position and I start defining the goals, or I start by defining them, understanding the goals of the company, of the factory, of the store, or whatever. And I make sure that I understand the intent of my boss and his boss and all the way up to the top. And I make sure I understand where my authority ends, and then I get to work. And I want you to understand something. There's always something to do. If you're at work and at home and you're feeling bored, then you're not taking initiative and you're not leading yourself. And if you finish your own work, help someone around you. And if you're home, get a book or learn something. Um, Social media is fun. I genuinely enjoy it, and in it, I find plenty of things that make me laugh, and connect me with people who I love and keep me involved in current events. I even run a rather large page for my other book, Conus Battle Drills, which brings me great joy in helping veterans transition to civilian life. All that being said, most of our engagements on these platforms is a waste of time. Um, Now, there are notable exceptions, and I'm sure that you can make the case of how that platform for you is an income generator. So we can have that discussion, but you know what I'm talking about. And there is that um, certain activities that you like to do on there that do not add value to anyone or yourself. And not just that, but I want you to think about the tasks that you perform every day, especially your off time. You watch movies and TV, sports, Facebook, Twitter, drink, whatever, and ask yourself, if I stopped doing this, would my life change at all? I used to be a big football fan, and I'm about to age myself here, but I love the Miami Dolphins, and I loved watching Dan Marino play. And I always wanted him to earn a Super Bowl ring and go down in history as one of the greatest players in the game. I knew every player on the team, all the stats, and I could spend hours watching the games on weekends. Um, and this particular time, it was Dan Marino's last game. It was a playoff game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I was in the living room at my aunt's house in Miami. And we were all very excited and hopeful, coming off a playoff win, that this was actually going to be the year Marino gets his ring. It wasn't. In fact, Miami was defeated in one of the worst losses of any team in the history of the NFL playoffs. It was embarrassing. They lost. I believe the score was 63-7. Um, I watched every second of that game, always believing there was a chance. And that night, I lay in bed, distraught, with actual butterflies in my stomach, physically reacting to this loss. And then I had an epiphany. Dan Marino didn't give a crap about me. He was still a billionaire, and my life would be exactly the same tomorrow as it was today, despite what a bunch of grown men did playing a football game. And that very night, I realized how much of my time and energy this useless activity was sucking up. And that was the last NFL game that I ever watched from start to finish. And honestly, my life is still completely unaffected about based on what happens on the field that day. So this is not decrying anybody that does that. I'm just telling you that that was a task, that was an activity in my life that was waste of time. So ask yourself again, if I stopped doing this, would my life change at all? And that is for all of these exceptions, people that want to give me the exceptions. If there is a task, so let's do an example. If you stop doing the dishes, your life is going to change. If you stop showering, your life is going to change. If you stop eating healthy or exercising, your life is going to change. If you stop watching sports or spending hours on Instagram, is your life going to change? For some of you, maybe. For most of you, no. And for me, I realized that football was a waste of my time. And I started leading myself to more productive endeavors with my newfound hours. And today, I need to constantly fight the urge to peruse Facebook in search of nothing, finding nothing, and losing precious time where I could be improving myself. I do. That Netflix and now Disney Plus as well. Wow. Anyway, when I know that I should be looking at the calendar to find out what's next, I find myself reaching for the phone to kill time, which is really quite stupid. And it's in that moment of temptation that I have to make a decision if I truly want to be a leader. And if you're here, then you're over 6,000 words into the book. That's the written one. The audiobook, you're probably past that. So it's probably safe to assume that you want to be a leader. So are you leading yourself? Are you taking the initiative to look at the calendar and find out what's next? Or are you allowing yourself to be consumed by wasteful endeavors, accomplishing nothing and moving yourself nowhere with your precious time? So stop waiting to be told what to do. Even if you do those things better than anyone else, it's really not impressive. Take the initiative. Find what's next on the calendar and stop wasting your time and start leading yourself. Just as another caveat here, it is important to take time off too. This is not the 100% hustle culture, um, but to do it in moderation and not let it get in the way of the positive things in your life that are going on. So, this is the part where we talk about the actions you can take in this book. Find one thing, just one, that you're doing right now that is not making you better. Okay. So, just for example, on my caveat here, if spending an hour a night with your significant other watching TV is improving your relationship, giving you the opportunity to unwind, relax, and recharge for the next day, that activity is in fact making you better. Okay. I'm going to posit that arguing with people about politics on the internet is not making you better. So unless maybe you're a pundit, but probably even then. So anyway, get wild with this. Okay. Delete the Facebook or Twitter app from your phone and maybe schedule a time of day when you're going to go and get on there. Just say at this point, I'm going to go and I'm going to log on. And if it's not hours of social media, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a football player that you need to stop fangirling over. Regardless, find that thing and replace it with something that's going to make you better, whether it's exercise or reading or recording your audiobook, whatever it is. And then drop in the comments what it is that you did and tell us how it's going and stay in touch and let me know because I'm curious to see how you are leading yourself.